So with the boot floor done, it's time to move on to something else, and that something else is the main floor of the car, and that's probably one of the worst parts of this car. 105s have two very common issues. The first issue is that the floors rust out, and the second and probably worse issue is that people always try to repair them who don't know what the fuck they are doing, and always end up putting patches over stuff and just making a mess. So you spend twice as long removing the old repair so you can actually get to the original damage so you can fix it properly. So and this car's no exception. It's got patches everywhere. One very special patch that I'm looking forward to showing you, I only just discovered the other day. But yeah, first thing to do though is put some air in the tyres, roll the car forward and sweep up the 8 kilos of grinding dust that's left after the boot floor repair. So here we are at the passenger front footwell, the worst of the lot. A bit of investigation. So this is the original floor panel here, and then this is the new plate that's been slapped on from the bottom. It's on the outside under this section, and then it's pushed into the inside on this section, and then it was completely covered with sound deadener. I think they were trying to hide their shame. Luckily it's only sort of semi-welded from the bottom, so I think with the angle grinder and a bit of patience I should be able to remove the fix panel and see what we've got to work with the original stuff. So back to grinding. Okay, so managed to remove one of the offending parts. That's the patch that was glued on the bottom of the car. Now it looks like they've used the bonnet or something, bonnet skin from another car, recycled that. Yeah, so damage is pretty bad. There's another patch here on the inside. I think what I'm going to do is cut it all the way along here and then remove all of this whole panel all the way around, including all these little returns because they're all rusted out, and then make up a whole new section in probably 2 pieces, one on this side and one along there with bend up that way. Yeah, it's going to be a big hole. Alright, a hell lot of grinding and we're back to original alpha material with some original alpha rust holes still there. I've left that there to hold the contour of the floor to help me make up the new floor section, so I've got something to follow. I unfortunately had to cut through this little return lip here and get rid of that because one of the previous little repairs, little patches, had been brazed on, and once the brazing's in there it is impossible to weld to, so I had to cut all that out. So the first job is to reinstate that little return flange there and put this little section back in on the floor, and then this whole panel is then all original, and then we can start remaking this panel in here. Well, that's the plan anyway. It's about 35 degrees today. It's probably a total fire ban, so I want to make sure I get as much welding and grinding done as possible. So that little repair panel has gone in there nicely, and that concludes the fixes for that top panel. Time to move on to the rest of the floor. Quite a large hole. So here's where we're at. I've got a cardboard template for the new piece of floor I want to make. Now this would be a relatively simple bending job, but I want to try and recreate this dimple in the floor that was in the original floor pan, and this circular dimple for the drain plug. And for that I went down to my local drug dealer and got a new piece of workshop equipment. So this is my new scrap metal maker. It is a bead roller. I got it a couple of weeks ago, and straight out of the box it was completely useless. and required a few modifications. As soon as I got it home, I bolted it to the floor in the wrong spot. Then I moved it, and then I tried some 1mm steel. Now this thing is supposed to be capable of 1.6mm, but even with the 1mm steel, the two rollers walked all over the place. There was a serious rigidity issue. So to improve that, I purchased a couple of lengths of 75 by 75 by 6mm RHS, cranked the welder up to 11 and welded them to the back of the plate. And that has increased the rigidity significantly. A few other small mods, just some adjustments to make it run a bit nicer, and a little handle at the top there to adjust the pressure on the rollers. So let's make some scrap metal. So full disclosure, I've never used one of these before and I have no idea what I'm doing. But I have done about 6 test bead rolls, so I'm pretty much an expert now. Some of the tests. First time I tried the step rollers, I noticed they had a really sharp edge, and that was quite different to the edge on the car. It's got more of a sort of radius at each bend. So I chucked the two rollers in the lathe and just took the edge off the rollers, and then sort of filed them over, and that's produced a much more similar bead to what's in the car. So let's give it a go. So what I've been doing is chucking a bit of metal in and getting that point, and then going 8 turns out. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. That lets me get the piece in. Line up our line with that bottom bead. Bottom roller, I guess, and then wind this down. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. Eight. Try and go the right direction. Wrong way, of course. So that first bead, unfortunately I've pulled it across too early, and that line should be up there, but hopefully I've got enough material to adjust everything across. That's why I cut everything out so roughly. So the next thing to try and do, and this is going to be the hardest thing to do I think, is to get the other bead on this side to get that distance right. That's going to be really tricky. So I'll go and remeasure the bead in the car and mark it on here, and then we'll come back and so roll this one back around this way. Alright, I've adjusted my line to try and match up with the channel that's in the car, so we'll go ahead and then roll this section. I want this bead to sort of taper off up to here. So I'm going to, once I get to this point, I'll unscrew it, move along a bit, unscrew it a little bit more, and hopefully sort of bleed off the taper up there. So there we go. Luckily I've got plenty of 1mm sheet lying around. Alright, that's worked out quite nicely. It's not too deformed either. The test pieces I did were really deformed. I managed to hammer them back into shape, but I think that was because they were small pieces, so because it's a bigger piece it's kept its shape quite well. It's quite flat actually, won't take much to sort of get that into the correct shape. Jesus, put a lot of strength in the panel. I'll go and hopefully this lines up with the original bit. If it has, I'm calling that a win. So despite not having a clue what I'm doing, this seems to have lined up really nicely with the floor. I can't actually fit it in there, so I just measured it and it all looks pretty good. So the next thing I want to do is create the dimple for the drain plug in here. Don't particularly want to do it on the bead roller because I reckon that'll look uneven and pretty shitty. So I'm going to turn a simple dimple die out of these two nice chunks of aluminium. So over to the lathe. So I've got the aluminium stock chucked up in the lathe. Unlike the bead roller, I've got just enough knowledge on a lathe to make me really dangerous. So we'll spin it up and make some aluminium swarf. Here's the drawing I'll be working off. I've just drawn it up to accommodate 1mm material with just little 45-degree angles on it. There's the top and the bottom part of the die, so we'll make the top piece first. First thing I'll do is just face off this material, I think. Alright, I'll just take one last facing cut to pull it into dimension, and this one's done. Alright, time to see if our new dimple dies work. So we want to put it about there, so I'll mark that. See if I can get my scribe down that hole. Yes. Alright. So no need to use geometry. Alright, I'll centre punch that, drill it out, and then we can take this to the press and see how we go. Okay, moment of truth. Got the bottom half of the die underneath, and I've got the drill there. I drilled the hole out, the pilot hole out, just to act as a guide to keep everything concentric. Slide that over. Appropriate spacer block. Crank the pumping. There we go, a nice little dimple. I've deformed the metal a little bit, but that's alright, we can straighten all that out. So that's starting to look quite good. Alright, I've wiped off all the original marks, I've blued up the plate, and now I'm going to carefully scribe the lines and then make some pretty sparks with the angle grinder. Alright, bit of a special occasion, so I've broken out a brand new cutting disc. Let's go to work. Alright, that was a bit nerve-wracking because there's a hell of a lot of work that's gone into this so far, but
it's about 4.5 inches.
Yeah, let's hope it fits.
About an inch and a half deep or so.
Okay, time for some bending. Unfortunately I can't do this bend in one section because there's a little curve in there that follows the top panel. So I'm going to have to do that in two sections and then sort something out here, probably get a bit medieval with a hammer, and then bend this one up as well. The issue I've got is this bender puts a very sharp bend radius into stuff, which is usually no problem, it's usually quite good, but it doesn't follow the path of the original bends in the car. So I've just got this little bit of aluminium angle that I've sort of radiused the corner over. And that seems to give a nicer sort of radius bends that follows what's already in the car. So I've got my rough angle I need to bend this lip up to, which is this, whatever that is. It's the 40 odd degrees, 42 degrees. So yeah, let's go for it. Starting to look like a floor. So the last bends to do is these ones here that bend down and they spot weld to a return lip on the other panel, and these are pretty much complete 90 and with a sharp bend radius, so that makes them a bit easier. So they're probably the ones I'll bugger up. First thing to do is make sure you bend the right side. Can't see anything through the safety glasses. I can't see that scribe line. So that has come up very nicely. It all fits really well. There was only a small amount of adjustment required after I finished the bending to sit it in there like that. I've just got it held in there with a couple of magnets and a couple of mole grips at the back, yeah, everything lines up nice enough for me to be able to weld it in. I've still obviously got a fair bit more sort of fettling to do in this area to sort of weld them up, round over all these sort of edges, but all looks good. Very happy with the result. That definitely deserves a beer, or another beer. So there it is, my interpretation of the front footwell floor pan of a 105. That's probably the most complicated panel I've ever handmade before, but it's come up really well. So I didn't film any of this section because it was pretty much the same as building this one without the added features. I did use the bead roller again to roll this little lip that follows an indentation in the side of the tunnel. And then obviously made it in two sections and welded it together out of the car. And it all fits in the car very nicely. Looks pretty good from underneath as well. So yeah, a little bit of cleaning up to do in the car. Drill out the spot welds, get the jack support sits on this bit of the floor as well as the side chassis rail, and weld her into the car and move on. Okay, there it is, all ready for welding. Hell of a lot of preparation to get to this point. Welding isn't much like painting in that it is all about preparation, and you get to inhale a lot of toxic fumes while you're doing it. I've used a variety of methods to clamp the panel in. I've got every vice grip I own clamping this seam weld at the back. I've got the Burn Engineering painted Clico clamps, the self-tappers, through a few of the spot weld positions with some nice big mudguard washers there, mud flat washers. They're holding it all down nicely, and a couple of magnets holding this side temporarily. And on this side, on this big unsupported flat section, I've come up with or made up a couple of these aluminium blocks with some little tapped M3 holes in them, and I've got a little M3 with some washers. And just go over there, and if your arms are long enough, you can put this little block under. You'll find the hole. And they're sandwiching those two panels together very nicely, keeping them very flat, and I'm hoping also the aluminium blocks under there will do the job of sucking some heat away from the weld, and also sort of create that argon trap. I can't really think of any cunning way to clamp these sections, but I'm not too worried about them because there's a lot of bends and forming in these sections, so I don't think warping is going to be a problem at all. So I'll just now carefully go around and tack around these areas, probably put a few tacks here and there, and just slowly work my way around. Yeah, see you in a few hours. God damn, that took a long time to weld, and even longer to grind back, but I am very happy with the result. All the important contours line up nicely. The butt welded new panels have worked really well. Those little aluminium blocks I made have done the job. Everything's nice and straight, very little warpage. Looks really good from underneath the car as well. So very happy with all that. I think that is the worst part of the floor. I'll move on to the passenger rear footwell, just because the car's in this orientation, and then move over to the driver's one. But I think this one's the worst. This was the hardest one to fix, so I reckon that deserves a beer. Cheers.